21st, 2022 for the Sanitation District #1 of Northern Kentucky. Welcome everybody. I don't think we have, do we have any visitors? We just got people doing the work. So, our first item of business is some informational items about the update of the strategic business plan. Chris Cole is going to update us on that.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks, everybody. So last year, we started the conversation about the strategic business plan. The current plan was approved in 2014 and is the most recent version of, there are several iterations of the plan before that one. But we figured 2014, it's been 8 years, probably time to take a look at that and see. We thought that we knew the plan was still a good plan. They put a lot of time and energy into that plan in 2014. And so we knew they had a strong plan. We just wanted to take a look and see if there's any areas that could be streamlined, any areas that could be updated a little bit to make it, make sure that it's relevant for 2022 and for, some years to come in the future. So the process looked a little bit like this. We started with a staff survey in December, and essentially we decided to keep this, we called it a refresh. We decided to keep that mostly internally focused because we knew we weren't going to be making wholesale changes, big dramatic shifts in direction with our strategic plan. So we decided to stick internally with that. We did a staff survey to get perceptions on where things stood with the various goals and strategies from the old plan. We then had I had one-on-one meetings with each director to get their impressions of the plan and the various elements of the plan and ways that we might enhance it or improve it. We had an open staff forum where all staff were given the opportunity to participate in that as well. That was in April. And then in May, we presented some of our findings to the management team, got some feedback from that, made a few small changes after that. And then just a couple weeks ago, I presented those changes to the full staff at our SD1 Live event on June 10th, I think it was, and got some feedback from that as well. And so now we're presenting today and going to give you guys just a quick overview of that, the changes that are happening, and then we'll develop new materials and new flyers and brochures and web content and all that stuff that goes with it. But I'll work quickly through here. So starting off with our mission statement, we felt that the mission statement was pretty strong, didn't need much changing. Our mission's good. The only change we really made was to add add the idea of efficiency. That's a driving component of what we do on a day-to-day basis here. And so the new mission statement, tweaked a little bit, is to provide the Northern Kentucky region with reliable and efficient wastewater and stormwater services that protect public health, property, and the environment while supporting the economic vitality of our community. The 4 pillars there, protecting public health, property, environment, and serving the economic vitality of our community, didn't change. The only thing we really did with that is add efficiency. The core values did change a little bit, but the concepts are pretty similar to what was there before. We added a little bit of context to each one. Our first one is transparency. We earn the public's trust through integrity, transparency, and accountability. The second one is quality service. We strive to meet the needs of everyone we serve. We tried to keep things simple with this version of the plan. The old one was a little bit wordy, and a lot of the components, you had to read it 3 or 4 times to figure out what it was really saying. Safety, we make the safety of our staff and our community our highest priority. Environmental leadership, we protect local waterways for today and tomorrow. That's why we're here. Innovation, we use technology and data to maximize impact and minimize cost. And so again, those core values: transparency, quality service, safety, environmental leadership, and innovation. Now the goals, the previous plan had 7 goals. Those are reported to you each month. All the decisions that we make tie back to the strategic business plan goals. We didn't get rid of any of the concepts. We combined a couple of them. We streamlined them. We've got those down to 5 just to make them a little bit more manageable. And they are, goal 1 is stakeholder engagement. Engage stakeholders to better understand and meet the needs of our community. Number 2 is operational efficiency. Optimize efficiency through continuous process improvements and strategic asset management. Number 3 is fiscal responsibility. Effectively manage the financial resources needed to carry out our mission today and into the future. Goal 4 is workforce empowerment. Cultivate a productive workforce that is empowered, equipped, and encouraged to serve our community with pride. That's the one that probably changed the most, really just shifting the focus from dedication to empowerment, because if you have a workforce that is empowered to do these things, you'll have a dedicated workforce. Number 5, environmental leadership. Protect Northern Kentucky's waterways through innovation, education, and collaboration. And again, those 5 goals: stakeholder engagement, operational efficiency, fiscal responsibility, workforce empowerment, and environmental leadership. One other change with this iteration of the plan, the refreshed plan, is the old plan. When a lot of people think about the plan, they think about the poster. It's on a poster, and the back of that poster had, 75 different strategies listed that sort of made it unwieldy. How do you really track progress on all these things when you've got 75 different pieces of things, progress you're trying to track? So what we did was, and I'm not going to go through them today, but the directors and the managers over the last several months have been working to create enterprise-wide goals that are tied to each of these, more specific goals that are tied to each of these strategic business plan goals. And so we've created one enterprise-wide goal for each of these 5 business plan goals, and we've shared those with the whole staff now, and we've also created some incentives tied to those goals so that everyone has some skin in the game. Everyone will be able to influence whether we reach those goals or not, and if we do, it'll benefit them directly. So hopefully that'll get everybody, even more so than they already were, pulling in the same direction on these major strategic business plan goals. I know I was quick. I didn't want to take up too much time on this. It is just a refresh. It's not a overhaul of the plan, but I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any other additional information.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Just it was well done.
Yeah, I think simplifying what was already there was a good idea, and you've obviously done that, so it
Excellent.
sounds good.
Thank you.
A lot easier to focus on the main things.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Chris.
Add my 2 cents.
Yeah, you can add your 2 cents.
I want to thank Chris. He has spearheaded this process, and I know we went through this very quickly, but it was a very in-depth process to go over everything that was in the strategic business plan. And I don't know if you all have a copy of the strategic business plan, the old strategic business plan, but it was very well put together. It was just too voluminous. It was just too much to focus on. And as we went through, I think the clarifications that he briefly mentioned are very important. I mean, we got down into the detailed discussion about what words mean and all these things, which we wanted to spare, of course, that conversation at this level. But it was very detailed. We did talk a lot about the definition of words and what does a stakeholder mean and all the things that go into creating a strategic business plan. So I just want you all to be aware that even though he went through that very quickly and briefly, that a lot of thought and work went into it. I want to thank Chris and the rest of the staff who spent all the time with the refresh. And when we get all the graphics together and the final package put together, we'll be handing those out. And we'll probably also, just for reference, hand out the old one too. So you kind of have a reference point to say, okay, where were we and where are we headed? So, but thanks, Chris, for all your efforts on getting us to where we are right now with this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, now we have our our consent agenda, so we have to start with the board meeting minutes from the meeting on May 17th. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as prepared.
We have a motion by Robert. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Jack. Any comments, any questions, any corrections that anyone thinks need to be made? Okay, without anything further to address there, all in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And then we have our informational items that are provided to us ahead of time so that board members can get into that information and take a look at it, and if there are any questions that we can raise those here. So does anybody have anything in those items to address, or any questions about anything they've seen in the reports?
Yeah, I was interested in the non-compliance issue at Eastern, and I just wondered if there was an update on that, and hopefully whatever the problem was, we've got it resolved. So I thought Joe might be prepared today, so.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, Robert is correct. Eastern Regional failed its second quarter biomonitoring test. Just a little bit of a background. At all three of the regional treatment plants, we check daily, weekly, and monthly permit parameters. And Eastern Regional, leading up to biomonitoring, was looking exceptionally well. All parameters that we check internally with our own lab were within acceptable limits, or in many cases below detection limit. Biomonitoring is a different type of test. It's prescribed through the local regulator, KDOW. Eastern Regional discharges into Brush Creek, which then goes to 12 Mile and ultimately ends in the Ohio River, where Dry Creek and Western discharge directly into the Ohio River. So its biomonitoring test is unique. It's a chronic test. It is not acute. There are two species that are checked in this test, and it's done by a contracted external lab. In our case, it's Microbac. The sample is collected, and different concentrations of our effluent are used over a 7-day testing period. It's a 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100% dilution ratio that they use. They put two species in our effluent, water fleas and fathead minnows. They check both species for survival. They check the water fleas for reproduction. They check the fathead minnows for growth at the end of the 7 days. We passed with survival. We failed the water fleas with reproduction. They did not reproduce as well as the lab had expected. They take the data at the end of the 7-day test. It's unlike anything we do within our own lab. They're not just putting meters and instruments in a sample of your effluent and gauging, DO levels, phosphorus levels, solids, things like that. It's a totally different test. They collect the data at the end of the 7 days, and they run it through a statistical program where they're looking for linear interpolation. And at the end, it spits out a concentration. That number indicates whether you pass or fail. In our case at Eastern Regional, our limit is 1 chronic toxicity units. We exceeded that limit. That's why we failed. When you fail, you're required by the state to resample within 15 days of the failure. That test has already been collected, sent off, and this week we're expecting the results for the second test. Unfortunately, I do not know why the water fleas were not able to reproduce. Everything did survive. There was no smoking gun in any of the treatment plant processes or any of the parameters that we check. Everything looked good. No industrial contribution. We pretty much ruled out anything that we thought it could have been. The lab does run a standard on these species to make sure that 85% of them do pass. Like anything, I mean, you could get a bad batch of bugs, but it passed their standard tests and their controls. Unfortunately, there is no pinpoint reason as to why we failed. I can tell you this time last year we passed Q1 at Eastern Regional. We struggled. We were able to overlay our plant data with the contract lab data, and we determined that leachate at the time was a contributing factor. The timing that the plant was receiving leachate relative to the time that we were collecting samples led us to believe that that was a contributing factor. We since rerouted that leachate to Dry Creek. Eastern Regional, as far as biomonitoring and all other permit parameters, has been doing fine ever since, up until Q2 of this year. We hope to get the information back from the lab this week. Hopefully we pass. The only problem if we pass is we still don't have a pinpoint or definitive reason of what part of our effluent is affecting the reproduction ability of the water fleece.
Wow. And if I understand right, Joe, this test is only for Eastern because it's discharging into a local stream versus the river?
Partially correct. Dry Creek and Western do acute toxicity. So Robert, that's actually a 48-hour test, one species. Eastern Regional, because it makes up the majority, if not the entirety of the flow in Brush Creek, it's chronic testing. It's a 7-day test versus 48 hours, and they test 2 species.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the explanation. My takeaway from this is, number one, there's no obvious problem at Eastern that's causing it. All the other tests, it sounds like, were well in compliance. So
Correct.
this is perhaps just an aberration. Hopefully that's the case. My other takeaway is, man, this stuff's a lot more complicated than I ever imagined. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's just that test. Everything else, I mean, we run it through a gamut of internal testing. We've got the latest technology, instrumentations, one of the strongest labs in the state. We're NELAC certified. Our lab's NELAC certified. So, I mean, we check everything, leading up to, during the course of a sample, daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So staff's a little frustrated. It's a little challenging. Hopefully it was just an anomaly. But I can tell you in treatment, we don't like anomalies. We like to know, even if we fail, we at least like to know why. But I'll keep you all posted on the most recent test and the results.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that explanation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Adam, you have anything on your information?
Lydia, I know you weren't prepared for this, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you give us an update on the holistic watershed plan approach? I know I got an update, not directly from you, but a little earlier. I think we had a meeting Thursday, but could you just give us an update on where we stand with that?
Of course. So our Bullock Pen watershed master plan is finishing up. So we actually have a pretty in-depth meeting coming up this Thursday to go over the final results with Strand Associates on what all they've determined to be the plan moving forward for that whole watershed. And then once they get all of our comments from that meeting on Thursday, they'll finalize the final report, and we'll get that within the next month or so for them to finish up their, final edits and things of that nature. So we're rounding the final block here, and after Thursday, I would have much more information for you. So that's where we're at.
We're expecting some feedback for the board probably then in a couple months.
Correct.
Beginning of late summer, early fall would be a time that we'd be able to have some direction as far as whether or not that, how that's going to affect our stormwater
Correct.
Program going forward.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks.
Anybody else, any questions, comments? Okay, bid contract approvals. Devin Robinson, Lytton Pump Station.
This is the first time Devin's presenting to the board, and typically we'll have our new folks introduce themselves. I just want to say a couple things about Devin. Devin, been here, almost a year now, right? You've been here almost a year?
Time has flown, but it hasn't flown that fast. I've been here since October.
Okay, so, okay.
It seems just like last week I just started, but yeah, it's only
time
been
is
since
flying,
October.
right? And you're a graduate of UC with a engineering background.
Yep, and mechanical engineering.
And this is the first time, like I said, you're presenting today. So why don't you tell the board a little bit about yourself?
Like you said, I just recently graduated from UC. It was a 5-year degree for mechanical engineering. Prior to this, I worked a couple co-ops with Mubia of North America. They do parts for GM, Ford, Chrysler, just about anything on the vehicle. And then after that, I did work in the research and development team at RBI Solar in Cincinnati. So that's my previous work experience. But yeah, then came here. I've known about SD1 all my life since my dad's worked here since I've been alive. But want to get some new experiences, kind of broaden my horizon, see what else is out there. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Excellent. Anybody have any other questions for Devin?
No.
You did let him know the board's never eaten anybody yet, didn't you?
I did not.
Yeah.
You can tell me that, but
Okay, Dan, good.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you. Glad to have you on board. Go ahead and let us know what we got to deal with here.
So Lytton Pump Station. This is a request for a construction contract for the Lytton Lane Pump Station improvements. The current condition of the Lytton Lane Pump Station, the pumps have had numerous failures and problems. The current condition of the pump station, there's corrosion throughout the pump station, and this project looks to improve the pump station by replacing key components and looking for improvements for future build-out of that area. So some of those components that are going to be replaced, this is going to be replacing the wet well, the valve vault, the valves, putting in new pumps, new control panels, basically a whole overhaul. And the whole process with this is we're going to install a pump station next to it and keep the current one in service and then transfer service to the new pump station. Let's see. Go to the next slide. So, got my notes. Let's say you've already seen this. This is anticipated return on investment. This project is directly in line with SD1's mission to protect public health, property, and the environment while supporting the economic vitality of our community. Like I said, the current condition of the pump station isn't great. They're all the components are from 1986, and they're outdated, and they've been causing numerous problems. So we're looking to change that by upgrading the pump station with new components. Go to the next slide. So we held a bid meeting on May 18th, and we had an attendance of 8 vendors and contractors. Of those that attended, 4 bids were received. They were from Larry Smith Inc. for $457,000, Smith and Brown Contractors for $460,551, and Long Construction Company for $524,350, and Synesis Construction Company for $638,270. SD1 staff recommends that the board award a contract for the lowest bidder, Larry Smith Inc., at the unit price submitted in their bid, which was a total of $457,000. Are there any questions?
I would think the question most people have is the budget variance on the construction estimate. It's quite a variance. Do you have any thoughts on that, or why is that so far over the estimate?
I have to defer to Rob for that.
Okay.
He can explain.
This was one of the projects that carried over. I think Adam addressed it in the last couple of board meetings about some of the asset management projects. The pricing has been adjusted. This is probably the last one of those that you'll see. So there was a bump in the asset management. The prices did come in a little bit higher than expected, so it's a combination of maybe typically a little bit higher pricing as well as our budget being corrected a little bit.
Okay, so this falls in that basket of things that we've talked about.
Pardon me?
This falls in that basket of things we've talked about.
Yeah, but I don't want to mislead you. They did come in a little bit higher than we expected, which of course sometimes does happen. We try not to inflate our estimates by too much to the point they get ridiculous. But yes, it definitely falls into that basket as well as a little bit higher than expected.
Okay, I think, I'm just curious how all the inflation is
Yeah.
affecting our projects, and if this is something that we missed because of, the rapid rise in inflation, or is it's really just because of the estimating issue I guess we had?
It definitely, the rapid rise of inflation is a big part of it, and I talked to a contractor yesterday who told me 8-inch ductile iron pipe is, one supplier's telling him it's 51 weeks.
Yeah, you can't even get it, right? That's what I heard too.
Yeah.
Right.
And no matter how much money you got, you can't
Yeah.
get it.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's all of the above, Rick.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, since you mentioned it, we did make a note, and I failed to mention it earlier. We did make a new note on our capital budgets in your packet, and it just identifies the projects with an asterisk that falls into this category. for the same reason, because there's no sense in keeping an old budget on there, because I'm more interested in what you're interested in. I know we were off on some of these original budgets, but now I'm interested to see, well, let's reset the bar, so when we get these coming up, that we can see the effect, whether it's some other issue or outside. So you'll see that on this sheet here. We put an asterisk with the ones that and Rob mentioned this may, hopefully it's the last one, or maybe a couple others that come out in the mix. But to your point, we have a new note on our spreadsheet, and we've adjusted those so you know which ones had the original budget issue, and you can start comparing now. Anything that comes over from this standpoint on should be some other reason, or inflationary, whatever the cause might be. So I failed to point that out earlier, but that's a good question.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Rick, and for everybody's understanding, we talk so much about the impact of inflation when we were going through the budget meetings, and we're not clear what's going to happen with that, but when you got a situation where you're seeing that, it's helpful for us to know that. Just really, it gives us a little bit of an understanding about what's going on.
You know, I mean, a lot of these have been set, the estimates have been set 12 months or
Right.
however.
Right.
Some of them even
in-
further
in
than
the
that.
past,
It just
right?
didn't really
And-
make
and-
a lot of sense. So
Right, so hopefully it's not a systemic thing where we're gonna be seeing these huge variances because of inflation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I guess we will know as we do them.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
You know, I had a question, and probably no one thought about this, like Rick says everybody thought about it. So the bypass pumping cost for them was really low. Did they come up with some type of innovative,
So the original,
because it's a lot lower than everybody else?
that's, so for Larry Smith, in I don't know exactly the specifics on why theirs came in so low, but that was one of the considerations that we were looking at in the design phase. The first estimate from the design consultant was $45,000 for bypass
Yeah.
pumping to replace the wet well and other components in the exact same location that the existing pump station is, and we were able to minimize that greatly by constructing the pump station nearby and then transferring service to the new pump station after it's been constructed, tested, and operational.
Okay. So is the thought maybe some of the other contractors missed that, or?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have to reach out and see.
I just don't want them to come back and say that, I mean, it's a lump sum, so I guess we can just hold them to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's their price for all.
Okay, okay.
That's a good observation, though. That's a good question.
Usually bypass pumping can be the biggest cost on a project. I mean, but it sounds like you guys thought through that and reduced it, so that's great.
I think that you mentioned it, but they set it up in such a way to minimize that cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of what you said, that it is one of the drivers. They were very cognizant of that. And then as you look through, that's a $2,500 item. The next lowest is $7,500. The highest is $29,000. There's a couple other line items in there too that are a little bit out of whack. That I think that a lot of times we don't know how they do it, but as a contractor,
Yeah.
they'll just put that money somewhere else. However they do that, but it wasn't. We did talk about this. It wasn't one that was, because of the way it was set up, concerning.
It's probably in their clearing and grubbing number.
Yeah.
It's probably in their
Right.
clearing
Moved
and
around
grubbing
somewhere.
number,
Right.
since that number was super high.
Yeah, mobilization, right.
Yeah, that's another one's mystery.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right,
it
right.
is.
Right.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve as recommended.
Rick moves to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And Katie seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Rob, you've got the Newport Shopping Center design. Thanks, Devin.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Devin. Good job.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. This project is designed for the Newport Shopping Center sewer upsizing. A little background on the project. It is a watershed plan project. It's also an asset management project. It's a good example of how the asset management part of our operations also combines with the watershed plan of our operation. This project was originally scheduled to be done after 2030. But we had, one of our project manager, Bob Wilson, was looking at a project adjacent to this one, and he noticed that this pipe was in bad condition, almost to the point of collapse. The pipe is in the neighborhood of 40 feet deep. If it had collapsed, now you got a point repair, you got the bypass pumping that's so expensive. So we went ahead and moved this project forward. It was a project that needed to be done in any event, sometime in a relatively near future. So we went ahead and moved it up so that we could take care of something we had to do anyway, but it also prevented a potential failure of an existing asset. So it's a good example of how we try to look at the watershed plan as well as the asset management and try to optimize both items. This is for the design of the project. You can see that we received 4 proposals on it. The lowest proposal was AECOM at $109,987. The recommendation from staff is to go ahead and award the contract, the design contract to AECOM for that amount of money. And at this point, I will take any questions that you may have.
I have a question. We call this the Newport Shopping Center sewer, which, does it like go under the parking lot of the shopping center?
Yes.
And there's a little bit of history with utilities in that area, as I recall, with some problems in the past between the Water District and Duke. But hopefully we're clear of all that.
We are, and this is actually going to be, and it's mentioned in the memo, this is going to be a trenchless project. So we're not going to be doing open excavation. There's a part of it that'll be open excavation, but the lion's share, it's about 700 or 800 feet long, I believe. But the lion's share of it will be trenchless because of the depth of it, and also not to disturb other utilities, trying to dig that deep, as well as get into that can of worms that you mentioned, Robert.
Yeah, okay.
So it'll probably be potentially a hand mining situation to go through and do it in that fashion, yes.
Okay, great.
So we have an easement through there, I guess, right?
Yeah, we're just going
So
through our,
we're staying in our existing easement and just going right
Yes.
next to the old pipe or something?
yeah, we're going right down the same pipe,
Same pipe.
yeah. I mean, we're actually, as they mine it, there will be bypass pumping in this operation, I imagine. More of that will come out during the design process, but as we go through there, you know, we'll just be mining out the old pipe, installing potentially liner plates, and then installing the new pipe, or it may come to some sort of auger machine. I'm not exactly sure the details, but it's potentially a hand mining with liner plates, may be the most effective way to do this. The fact that there is already a pipe there leads you to believe it's not going to be going through rock or any hard digging, so it may be just as efficient to hand mine it versus bringing in a large machine.
'Cause I was thinking the same thing Robert just asked about. We've got, it was a stormwater pipe, wasn't it? I mean, do we
It's
wanna?
different. It's a little different.
Yeah, to clarify that, there's a private stormwater pipe. It's like a 10-foot pipe that goes all the way underneath the Newport Shopping Center. It was originally placed in there when the property was developed to allow for the development of the property in the shopping center. We do have past history on that one. We had a lawsuit that went all the way to trial regarding the ownership of that pipe, and we were successful. So
Okay, that has been all settled.
that's settled, and it remains a private pipe
That's their pipe.
maintained by the shopping center.
Okay.
I'm sure they did. That's explains all your problems. But yeah, Bob and I were just talking, at our meeting, at our chairman meeting, we had the same conversation. We do need to separate the two. That we were successful in a stormwater pipe issue through the courts. That's been completely handled and done. And this is separate, a different section of pipe that is in our easement and our ownership, so.
I just told Adam, I grew up right across the street from this. I watched him cut that hill back and build that whole thing. And I went under swimming in the storm pipe one day. They were probably putting sanitary stuff in it too. But I came home, I got in a whole lot of trouble. Okay, anybody?
So when you told me that, I said, that explains a lot.
Yeah,
That explains a lot.
Right.
I'll blame it on the pipe. Any other questions, comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Jack makes a motion to accept this proposal. We have a second?
I'll second.
I thought you would. That's why I was looking at you. Russ second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That passes unanimously. Reservation of capacity. Jason?
How's everybody doing?
Fine.
So far, we're doing great.
Great. This past month, we received 5 new and 1 revised sanitary sewer reservation of capacity requests. Table 1 provides the name of each development, including additional information. These requests allow for 5 years to complete the development. Upon staff's review, none of these requests result in any new sanitary sewer overflows, so the staff is recommending the board approve these requests for a period not to exceed 5 years. I'll present these in 2 steps due to Jason's recusal, due to a conflict with the Ballyshannon project. So if there are no further questions, I request a motion to address the reservation requests for Chipotle of Independence, Hickory Valley Phase C, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and the Harris Pike development.
Comments, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the reservation of capacity requests.
Robert moves to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Jason seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously. And then we'll do the Ballyshannon.
Okay.
Jason will-
Yep, then we request a motion to address the reservation of Ballyshannon Phase 5, Section 20.
Any comments or questions?
I'll make a motion to approve that reservation of, for capacity.
Okay, so we have a motion by Robert. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Russ seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
That was pretty good. That's quick. You know, I noticed we're getting a lot of requests for capacity. Big capacity. So I know there's a lot going on because all you had to do is drive around northern Kentucky and see it all going on. Cost share program, Sean.
Good afternoon. We have received a request from the City of Dayton for a public cost share program. It is at the corner of Kenton Street and 4th Avenue in Dayton. This is the area. 4th goes east and west, and Kenton goes north and south. There's very limited storm system in this area, and this is a combined sewer system. To the right where the red line is indicated, water ponds doesn't drain, and it spreads into the roadway. During the cold season, turns into ice. During the warmer weather, it just sits there, creating a hydroplane type situation. With a medium-sized storm, all that flow actually pushes to the intersection. There are 4 existing catch basins. They're old and they're very small, and they really cannot handle it. That intersection, I don't want to say quite often, but it usually gets flooded to the point that city actually has to shut it down for an extended time, sometimes for just a few hours. The plan is to install, where the red lines are showing, install a couple of large catch basins and connect it to the system, and additionally to on 4 to the right and to the left. Then at the intersection, initially the plan was just add additional catch basins. Because of the limited space and the ramp, it just didn't make any sense. Since the existing catch basins are old and they're small, might as well just replace those to upsize it instead of installing new ones. We thought that was a pretty good idea. The estimate, the actual bid prices, the total cost is $121,400. At 50%, SD1's share is $60,700. The initial application came in, the engineer's estimate, the city engineer's estimate was SD1's share was $43,900. It being under the threshold of $50,000, it gets routed internally, staff approved it. But once they advertised it, the bids came in, it pushed it, SD1's share at $60,700, which requires the board's approval. We have 10, from FY22, we have 10 projects committed for funding, totaling $527,840. And with this new project at $16,800 overage, It will bring us at 544, 640. The 10 projects that I mentioned above, it already includes the 43,900 that staff has already approved. So we are requesting the board would approve the total amount of 60,700 since that requires board's approval.
Questions, comments?
I would just ask the same question as we did on the pump station. Is this, I mean, the engineer's estimate, I understand, was low. Was that just because, I mean, is there just the bidding environment? Is it inflation? Is it, the project didn't change though, right?
The project did not
Physically.
change, correct. The project did not change. From what I hear is the uncertainty of the market, and quite often, maybe an exaggeration, they say prices, it literally varies daily. And quite often the contractors, they honor their prices for like a week, maximum a month. They can't get the pipe. In this particular case, I believe also because the roadway is fairly tight and there are utilities, that was a bit of a concern. The project engineer had actually accounted for it, but just the uncertainty of the market.
Okay.
So it does sound like this one was inflation or.
Sounds like it,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it just seems like,
Just how busy everybody is,
Right.
maybe, and combination,
yep.
yeah.
Just shed some light on that. The other evening, I was at an event, had a lot of contractors there, and 3 of them were contractors like we would work with. And they all said the same thing, that almost immediately, the beginning of last week, things started to shut down. So they're not seeing the calls coming in, they're seeing a lot of projects that were there to be bid, that they've now retracted those. So they expect the market to soften, and meaning that, you know, it isn't going to help us any on the materials they need to build. It will help us with regard to the personnel necessary to install that equipment, and but that is happening right now.
Sure.
Well, their cost of money went up quite a bit too.
What did? You're right. That's another thing I didn't factor in.
Fuel is impacting a lot of things that we don't even factor in when we think about these kinds of things. So-
Many of these contractors are basing their bids on fuel prices and what happens if they go up and down. So in a land development world or something like that, you know, very, very hard to get good solid estimates on your costs. So I would imagine they're probably hedging their bet a little bit there too.
Right. Any other comments, questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Rick moves to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jack seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anybody opposed? So that project is accepted unanimously. And then we have, it's necessary for us each year to approve the next fiscal year's meeting schedules so that they can be publicly published as they come up. We have both the board meeting schedule, which is on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. And Angela was kind enough to point out that there's a Monday before the 3rd Tuesday. It's a holiday, so we don't get, maybe for me, so I don't get mixed up that it's actually Tuesday and not Monday on the day after Martin Luther King. And then we have the working group schedule, which is going to be on the 2nd Thursday of each month at 9 o'clock in the boardroom. And you have both those schedules in your packet, so y'all have had a chance, hopefully, to look at that. Does anyone have any questions about these meetings, any concerns about it, any suggestions that we should do anything differently?
All looks good to me. I did have a question I raised with Adam yesterday, maybe to clarify what the board working group meetings are all about. My recollection was, with your leadership, Bob, a few years ago, we established, we had 3 working groups on different subject areas because there were a lot of things that needed attention: stormwater, billing, capital projects. And so we sort of split up as a board to do those. Most of those matters have been resolved and sort of, brought to a point where everything's working well right now. But there are still times when I think we as a board need to have more time to go in depth onto some issues. And for a while, we took the stormwater group and it sort of morphed into the board working group, and we extended an invitation to any of the board members who wanted to come. So is that sort of where we are now with the board working group? It's basically, it's open to the entire board. Anybody who can attend, it's an opportunity for us to meet and again, go into greater depth on issues and then make a recommendation to the full board for consideration at a future meeting. So I just want to sort of confirm that that's where we are and how that process is working and make sure everybody was comfortable with that too.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent summary of where we've been and where we're headed. It is open to all members. Some of it is that we had new members and we invited them, but it is. I think it's better that we have everybody who would like to learn a little bit more come to those meetings. So again, I'm going to reiterate exactly what you said. This is an open meeting. It will be kind of dependent on the subject matter. We will determine prior to an agenda, and we talked a little bit. It was stormwater, and then we were doing our rules and regs. So we still have to wrap that part of it up. So we'll probably have some of the meetings for that purpose. Lydia mentioned early in today's program that the holistic watershed plan will be done. I do believe we're going to spend some time in the working group in fiscal year 23 talking about the results of that and where we head from there. So the only other thing that you had mentioned yesterday was, since it is open to the entire board, that instead of a chair, that the presiding member would be chairing those meetings. So for instance, if Bob's not at that meeting, it would be Rick as vice president, assuming that this vote goes well after this. But and then so on down the officer line. But I think that's a great suggestion that that those would be functioning and scheduled that way. And as you all know, if there is no agenda, we will let you know. We will not have all of these meetings. I don't envision having every single one of these, but we would like to approve this, get it done so that we have the option of those meetings every month.
And I think that to just kind of elaborate on that a little bit, we were having board meetings. We started this about 7 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
We were having board meetings that were lasting until 4 and 5 o'clock because we had a lot of questions on the board. And so the purpose of these meetings was to break that up a little bit so that if individual members have questions about things they're seeing on the agendas, that they can come to these meetings, and the public can also come. And I think that's an important thing to point
definitely.
out. And there is an agenda that is posted. We know what the agenda is going to be. So when you see something, if a board member sees something on there that they really have some questions about or want to learn more about, to Adam's point, that's why we have these meetings. And that also applies to the public. Watch those agendas. If there's something on the agenda that you'd like to have a little more information about, then you're certainly welcome to attend. Any other questions, comments?
I've got a question on our agenda. We've got a meeting scheduled for July, but I noticed on the schedule, we don't have a meeting scheduled. Do we have one for July or not?
This year we did not schedule one, or we did not schedule one for July. I'm sorry. These would start in August.
But,
That's a good observation.
in the agenda for today's meeting, you've got one scheduled for July.
I'm sorry, that's the mayor.
Okay, that's good.
And that's important to point that out, because this will be the schedule we're voting on.
Yep.
Not what's in the board agenda. Okay. Can we have a motion to approve, and we're approving both of these schedules at the same time?
Make a motion.
Russ moves to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Robert seconds. All in favor?
Aye. Anybody
opposed? So our meeting schedule has been adopted and accepted by the board. Any legal? Brian? Okay. So our new business today, and then we'll address old business. Well, let's, before we do the elections, I'm gonna flip that. Is there any old business that we need to address?
How are we coming on getting our new billing system and everything? Are we all ready to go off on the first?
Yes, actually, it's coming along very nicely. If Ron, you want to give us an update on that? But Doug or Ron, Doug, would you prefer to do that? It's up to.
I'll just hit the top of the way. If you want technical information, we'll get Doug up here. But we started billing in March, and it's going well. We did have the hiccup with the data situation in that month, but we're able to recreate what we needed and move forward. So it's moving forward. They're fine-tuning processes. They are moving to change how we send our billing information to the printer to a more efficient and effective way. So we're kind of fine-tuning some of our processes behind the scene. To our customers, they still don't know that you can't tell anything different. The form looks the same, the billing is the same. So we're working to add some enhancements as we go forward, and that's the process that's going on right now. We are going to continue to work on the portal that we talked about initially. That has been delayed slightly. We're looking at fall for the portal to come online. Again, we want to make sure all our processes are working properly. We're not negatively impacting our customers. And as we gain efficiencies, we will start to turn to adding more things that our customers can do, more self-serve options and stuff like that. So that's kind of our mission as we go forward. So the next big thing will be our winter factor billing, which is calculated and billed for the first time in August, which is a big calculation. It'll be the first time with the system, so that is the immediate focus right now. So, and things look well there, but that's the focus right now.
So our portal access is running a little bit behind there.
The revised, enhanced portal. Now, we still have the same Paymentus portal that allows on-demand payment, setting up payments and stuff like that. So the basic portal is out there. It is user-friendly, but we want to even enhance that further going forward. That's our vision.
I know we talked about this, and is the customer going to have the ability eventually to choose how they want to be billed, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually?
The system will have that potential. We're not at a point at programming, but the system has that potential. And as we get to the point of adding the enhancements, that may be an enhancement that we consider sooner than later. Certainly, it is on the list of things that's been requested in the past.
Anybody else? Doug, you got anything to add to any of that?
Just the big, he was mentioning winter factor is the next big thing. We're also going to do a revised paper bill because we looked at March as a very successful go live because people weren't calling saying my bill looks all wrong because we followed the same format and everything because we wanted to make sure that the reason we did that was to have our staff transition to the new bill and not get a lot of new customer calls. So that way our staff could learn the new navigation because it works differently than the old system because it's what, 30, 40 years newer. So therefore it works through a web-based system. So it took our staff a little time to learn the new flow, but that's why we wanted the bills to look the same. So yeah, we're working to get the new, I mean, the big goals this month, like this what we call phase is the new paper bill, the winter factor, and then we have a bunch of write-offs that we're getting ready to do. But that's the three projects that are going on right now with the billing system.
Good. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
No, Russ, thanks for asking. And while they're up there, appreciate these two's efforts. Obviously, the rest of the team, Ashley Bodie, who's, I think last time we had an update, Ashley might have presented that, but we did do Chris mentioned this, we did SD1 Live, which is a kind of an internal updates day. And, the reason it's gone so well is because it's kind of been under the radar. I mean, you've been doing a great job of not noticing, and that's successful. Not only from a customer standpoint, but also from my standpoint and the board standpoint. It's just been, it's been very smooth. So thank you both, and thanks Russ for asking that question, because I do think that's been a very smooth rollout so far. I mean, like you said, you got some things that you're continuously working on, but yeah, thanks very much, and thank you guys and your team for making that kind of fly under the radar, because that's how you know it's been successful, when you're not hearing a whole lot about it. So thank you.
And it's catching small little errors that would sneak through the old system, so it's helping out with that too, with because it was always about being more accurate with the billing, and it's definitely helping with that too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, there was no one signed up for public comments, so now we'll move on to the board officer elections. This is going to be a process of, we are required to go through a formal vote. And so we will be taking nominations. We'll need a nomination and a second for anyone who wants to run for these positions. And then we will have a vote on that. So, Rick, you want to start? We might as well just go in order here. You want to take the meeting over here and run the first office?
Okay, the first office with open nominations will be for president. Bob Boswell is the current president and has agreed to do that for another year if he's nominated for that. So I'd be looking for a nomination, first and a second nomination to that effect.
I move to nominate Bob for president.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Great.
Bob, do you accept the
I do.
nomination?
I do.
Do we need to vote on the nomination, or we just move on to the? Okay, so are there any other nominations? Close the nominations. So now we need a first and a second, a motion to elect Bob to the board president.
I'll
make a motion to
Okay.
elect Bob.
Motion by Jason. Is there a second?
I'll second.
that.
We'll say that
That's
was
from
Robert.
Campbell County.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that motion carries.
Okay. And now we'll go to the vice president of the board, and again, Rick has, if nominated, agreed to accept, but we have to go through the nomination process here. So, do we have a nomination for vice president of the board, a nominee?
I'd like to nominate Rick.
Okay, Jack nominates Rick. Do we have a second to that?
I'll second Rick.
Jason seconds. Are there any other nominations? Given there's no other nominations, nominations are closed. The only candidate is Rick Wessels. We need to vote on that. Do we have a motion to approve Rick as vice president?
Yes.
Okay, Russ moves to elect Rick as vice president. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, Rick, do you accept that vote, that nomination? I'm sorry, I
Yes.
should have asked you that after the nomination.
That's okay, yes, I do.
Now we got the third board. This is just so awkward every time we do this. And then we have secretary of the board, and Robert, we contacted everybody that was already in office just to see if they would accept, so that you all would know. But that's not to say we can't have two people nominated here. So this is open nominations for secretary of the board. Do we have a nomination?
I make that nomination.
Jack nominates Robert. Is that right, Jack?
Yes.
You nominate Robert Horine. Do we have a second for that nomination?
I'll
Make that
second.
motion.
Rick seconds. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, the nominations are closed. Robert, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Okay, do we have
I
a,
will point out that we can only serve 2
That's
consecutive
correct.
terms.
That's
So
correct.
next year, there
Yeah.
have to be new
Yeah.
elections for all these positions.
that's right. So do we have a motion to vote on Robert as secretary of the board?
I make a motion.
Russ makes the motion to accept Robert, to elect Robert as secretary. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jack seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So Robert is elected unanimously to be secretary of the board.
I nominate Katie Nolan to be treasurer.
Just get it over with.
Right.
Okay,
I
so
second
the
that
nominations just got open. Robert nominated Katie, Russ seconds. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, without any other nominations, the nominations are closed. Katie, do you accept?
I do.
Okay, so Katie accepts. Do we have a motion to elect Katie?
Yes, I do.
Jack makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Robert seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Is anybody opposed? Okay, Katie, you're the newly elected. You are the elected treasurer of the board.
It shows
The
it.
incumbent. Okay. I don't know if incumbency in these elections are really a good thing or a bad thing. Okay. So we've got the officers set for next year. Is there any executive session? I assume not, Brian, since we don't have any legal issues. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So made.
Russ moves to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Jason seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I think we're adjourned.
We got cookies over there.
Thank you,
Tell you a
guys
story.
and gals.
Thanks for the.
Thank you.